Hello there gorgeous gamers and welcome back to Pure Play TV, and we have our review for RiMS Racing, a new motorcycle racing game from RaceWard Studio and Nakon. But is it any good? Well, saddle up and watch on. I played RiMS Racing on easy mode for 95% of my time reviewing it. The other 5% of the time I was annoyed, frustrated and just quite miserable as I constantly sent my poor rider head over arse with every corner. RiMS Racing is a simulation through and through. It's unforgiving, difficult and unwieldy. Its biggest problem isn't even its own fault. Despite some nice DualSense features, I don't think a gamepad can really do the job required when it comes to the fine control that you need to really race a motorcycle. Playing the game, I found myself wishing for one of those arcade bike machines. You know the kind, the tatty, battered and scuffed plastic bikes that always have a whiff of piss about them. Now that is how you control a bike in a racing game. My frustration was not helped by the screeching, squeaking, banging and clanging of my bike smashing its way into the gravel was blaring out of my DualSense controller every 30 seconds. After a couple of hours of hating life, RaceWard Studio and video games in general, I checked the settings and I noticed I was not on the easy mode that I desperately needed. Once I sorted this out, I started to really enjoy RiMS Racing. Now, I know that sounds like I'm going against the game's ultra hardcore simulation, but the option is there. RiMS Racing is a hardcore simulation if you want it to be. If your idea of fun is hitting every racing line perfectly, managing your lean angles, tyre pressure and all the rest of it, then great, you will surely have a blast. So long as you can bridge the connection between you, the inadequate input of a gamepad, and a motorbike that needs to be gently nudged but never forcefully pushed, lest it push back and throw you away. If you are that kind of person, you'll probably get a kick out of the game's extensive customization options. To be fair, it is very impressive, and I don't think I've seen so much granular choice in any racing game before. You can swap out every part of your bike, from the windscreen to the brake pads to the wing mirrors. You can pull it all off and replace it with new stuff, so long as you've got the cash for it, as well as the patience to actually flick through the inventory screens and manage your bits and bobs. This is actually an integral part of the game's lengthy campaign mode. Every part of your bike will suffer from wear and tear. Over time, their condition wears down. For some things, like the wing mirrors, this isn't really an issue, especially on PS4, where the mirrors don't actually mirror anything. But for your brakes, brake fluid, tyres, and all the other actual mechanical parts, it's a big deal. I found it easier to just swap out bits that needed replacing as and when they were knackered, rather than building up a collection of spare parts, though some races actually reward you with parts in addition to cash, so if you're any good or an easy mode lover, you'll build up a small collection of parts anyway. Something I liked at first but quickly got bored of was the mechanic, and no, that's not a typo in my script. You take on the role of the mechanic by combining button presses and stick twirls to manually remove and replace each piece of hardware on your bike. It's a nice idea, but in practice it gets old fast. The developers must have known this too, because you can buy a perk with your team points, the currency you use for upgrading your racing team, that removes the interactive part of the process and turns the workshop into a regular old menu with easy swapping. There's a lot going on off the track, and it's just enough to make it feel like you're gaining something and putting your winnings to good use without being an absolute slog. On the track, RiMS Racing doesn't quite qualify for a podium finish, but it's not far off. The RiMS Racing campaign mode is broken up into seasons of around 70 events, though you can reduce this number by skipping out on events from time to time. I tended to do this whenever I could, mainly because I got annoyed quickly with the very long race times. In career mode, you don't have any say over how many laps you race for. Some events begin with warm-up sessions, which I always skipped, and then the races can go for 7 laps, which, depending on your skill level, could mean around 15 minutes of solid racing. For me, that's just a bit too long. The actual racing is good, so long as you're playing on a difficulty that is set to your preferred level. It's nothing we haven't seen elsewhere before though, but what it does do to try and set itself apart from the pack is have an in-race diagnostics. So if you think your bike feels off, you can press the touchpad and pause the game while you're shown the condition of your bike's components. Nice feature, sure, but I barely used it. Technically, RiMS Racing is a bit disappointing. I mostly played on PS5, but I did also give the PS4 version a go as well. On PS4 the game runs at 30 FPS and it looks okay, nothing remarkable, just okay. On PS5 the game is supposed to run up to 60 FPS and it is very much a case of up to. It's not consistent, and while I'm not one of those frame counting nerds, I could tell right away when it was going down to the 50s and 40s, and it didn't feel great in those moments. Graphically, it's good, but there are some flaws with the presentation, mainly in how the game does its reflections. There's a weird, distracting line effect across the screen that's really evident when racing on a wet track. There's also noticeable popping of objects, especially on the point-to-point tracks, but for the most part, it looks good, but it's nothing spectacular. That is RiMS Racing in a nutshell. Good, but not great. It's a fine first attempt from the studio and a solid base to build on, and I'm sure that motorcycle racing fans will lap it all up. Though with only a small selection of bikes and tracks available, it may not last many laps. And that is the end of this review. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. If you did, you know what to do. Go on down below, comment, like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss any future videos. The info box has our social media channels, website links, and our supporters links where you can support the team if you can. I've been Chris, you've been gorgeous, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, bye bye.